What's up, everyone? We got ourselves Group C, but it's not quite like it used to be. In the bottom left, we do have Byun, and in the top right, we do have Rogue. So in the past, we had 4 groups, for a long time, I guess, of GSL that were all fresh faces. All right, that was where everyone started. My cat wants to help cast. This year, we have an even more reduced GSL. So actually, it was only a round of 12 that I was able to get in. So this is called Group C, but it is a continuation of a bracket, which I think is a little different than what people expect when we... Now she's helping to observe. When we talk about groups like this. But Rogue did already play. I had to recheck myself, actually, because I was like, wait, didn't Cure play? And Cure is also in this group. And that is because, yeah, some of these guys, they advanced right into the next round because of their performance in the qualifier, while other guys didn't perform as well, had to play in, a round of 16 bracket, but not a full bracket. Yeah. So Byun has not played yet this season. This is his first appearance in GSL. He did well in the qualifier. He is facing the person that did not do well in the qualifier, had to go through that extra round, and now is here. And the same thing for Cure and herO, where Cure did less well in the qualifier and herO did very well. So hopefully that is a quick explanation in case everyone is looking at the thumbnail or the names on the title and is like, wait a minute, these guys already played, or some of them did. Yeah, it's because GSL is even reduced further, unfortunately. But now that we got that out of the way, we do have a nice TVZ set up here. Now, Rogue, I actually didn't give him a lot of credit going into his previous group, and I think I was redeemed a little bit by that because I think, didn't he face Cure? Didn't he face Terran as well as a Protoss? Now I was very impressed with his Protoss play, particularly the wall off. I think it was on this map as well. It was just like, it was really nicely done. He faced Nightmare, that's right, and then I think he faced Trigger as well. And then I feel like he faced Cure too. I really should have had this up, but I was afraid of opening the Wikipedia in case I got spoiled. So that's the hard line you have to walk when you cast replays. Anyway, Rogue I thought was very good in his first EVP. I really liked the way that he was able to respond to Nightmare. I mean, certainly was probably expecting to some degree that Nightmare would be a little cheesy, but then the way that he reacted, I thought was very strong. But his game versus Trigger, while he did, on paper, kind of look like he dominated, I don't think that really tells the whole story. There was a little bit less of a wow factor for that best of series. And the winter match that he played, I also wasn't... Oh, did he face Maru? Oh my god, is that what that... It was Maru. That's what it was. Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. It's coming back to me now. Yeah, Maru just breezed through, but the one hiccup he did have was against Rogue. So this is obviously a little more pertinent to the current series we're seeing. We do have a 3cc from Byun, and Rogue's not doing anything cheesy, so not much going on here. But Rogue's games versus Maru, arguably he should have won the first one, because that was absolutely insane. Maru's defense against the Roacholin that he apparently didn't really see coming, and had done the greediest build in the whole wide world to actually still end up defending against it. I don't know how that worked out. And I don't really blame Rogue for the loss necessarily, as much as I blame Maru for being Maru, like especially Maru, like in that tournament, in that group. It seemed like nothing he did could fail. So, yeah. But going back to my original point, I didn't give Rogue the most credit. To me, he wasn't a guaranteed advancer out of that last group. I thought Nightmare and Trigger could actually give him a little bit of trouble, which he even agreed with, I think, in this post-game interview, that Trigger usually plays well, I guess specifically is what I read. But he did play better than I expected, actually. Just in terms of that very stable macro play for the most part. And Rogue, he's been the best at so many different metas, and while he's come back after military and not been the literally best Zerg, he still... It should be noted that he has had times where he has been exceptionally cheesy, but he's also had times where he's been exceptionally macro-focused, and both times he's, won championships or gotten far in tournaments in the past. So it's not necessarily surprising, but it is just a constant check on how Rogue is doing, as his return from military, post-military StarCraft 2, is a little shakier. I mean, Byun's technically is as well, but his was much, much longer ago, so we don't really talk about him being, like, shaky post-military. Although, really, what is time in the context of StarCraft? It's like, we call newbies, like, Nightmare, like a newer face, even though he's been around for 10 years. Anyway, so that's why I didn't, like, automatically advance him forward, even though Nightmare and Trigger had less accolades in their history. And for Rogue to come in now to this group, facing Byun first of all, TVZ, very mechanically demanding. This is where I would expect him to be the most tested. And yeah, I can't really even draw much from that Maru series, because Maru is just playing out of his mind. I think Byun's going to be a different opponent, for sure. Just, if nothing else, just that little magic that Maru had brought. I'm not sure Byun will. Just, again, that nothing can go wrong for this guy. This is like the perfect golden day. Don't think Byun's going to have that. And already seeing that a little bit here. Definitely not a perfect game. Although for both players, actually, as 2 drones went down, so did 3 SCVs. Banshee Harass did that. No Cloak Banshee, too, which Byun has been doing. I'm not really certain why. I do imagine there is some direct result of a faster, perhaps... I wanted to say tank. Okay, well, there's already tank. It might be the faster tank. That lack of upgrade can influence the rest of the build. But usually, other people would go ahead and get it. If you get 2 Banshees, you get Cloak. That was the old standard. Byun's trying to, I guess, take out that old standard. Overlord does die, but Rogue not supply a block, does he? Does maybe build a few more Overlords, though, as he's getting ready for possibly the army burst. He knows that Byun is about ready to go across the map. All the upgrades are done. The 3CC is obviously finished and saturated at this point. All the upgrades will be done. It's just the expected time, really, and Rogue is going to need a bit more of an army to defend. Rogue has done a great job getting up to almost 80 drones and has already begun to advance his technology, but the push is here. Does he have enough? Baneling speed, not even halfway done, so that is a little scary. But it is only 1 tank. The factory did have to spend some time not producing to afford, I think the medevacs is what it was, and perhaps the reactors as well. Note the 3 extra barracks coming down for Byun means that he is going to 8 racks. So that is a lot of pressure. And Byun not particularly eager to find damage right here, right now, because there will be something worse on the way, worse for Rogue. That is a non-stop stream of Marine tank medevac. But generally, I think you would want something to go a little wrong at this point, because if Rogue does really get all this time to not have to worry that much, get up to all of his upgrades, get to a Viper, get to, you know, a Viper with energy, most importantly, and have a big army, and have 4 bases. You know, like, if you don't do anything to the guy before they get maxed out on all that technology, well, then you're probably not going to win with the 8 racks. Rogue, it doesn't want to tackle the front army, decided that a run-by would be a little bit better. Just bypasses the supply depot wall, which didn't end up really saving any SCVs. Unfortunately for Byun, that timing seemed a bit perfect, basically. His reinforcements were not quite ready to actually defend that big of a run-by. Nice, clever positioning right here. The tanks taking a lot of free shots. The Marines not forced to flee. Rogue, once again, deciding that this is not where he wants to make his defense. He does have another 4th, right? His 4th is done. And this is a perfectly acceptable response, particularly to an 8 racks, which is really quite dedicated. If this was actually a 4th CC, maybe you don't want to lose that 4th hatch, but we do have to make some concessions here. This is a very tough spot to beat. Rogue, without those Vipers as well, can't abduct these tanks. He decides to just flood the zone. Figures that he has enough army with some tanky queens in the midst as well, kind of tanking the tank shots that he goes for, but that wasn't all of the army. Byun had been accumulating his reinforcements after dealing with the run-by. I mean, he basically dealt with it by letting the SCVs die, but what he lost in the economy, he kept in army, and that is the really scary thing right now. Rogue, down about 20 army supply, late to the response, can't lose both his 4th and his 5th. Fortunately, his response is just about fast enough to save the 5th base, but the 4th base is under fire. Looks like the Queens were there to try and hold on. They were not good enough. Whatever he left there was not enough. The 4th base definitely going to go down at this point. The 5th, so freaking low, could just be tapped in. Just tap it in. Just a little drop, kill the base, and then Rogue's back down to his initial 3 base mining. He does have a macro hatchery building, which mining will be a concern. General mining will be a concern. But what can often be even more concerning is the larva when you are forced to give up 2 hatcheries as a Zerg. So that actually is pretty important. It is obviously 300, well, 275, I guess, nowadays. So I need to, it's going to be hard to update that one, actually. But it's about 300 minerals, including the drone. There you go. Oh no, the Hydras. The Hydras are taking a fight here. They really don't want to. 2-2 versus 2-2, but that's melee, not missile. Hydras do lose out. No protection for them. Lurkers trying to respond, but there goes the hatchery. It was so weak to begin with. Rogue once again going for the run by. It looks like Byun put the pressure on at the exact right time. Before Rogue was comfortable, before Rogue had gotten to his lurkers, before Rogue had gotten a big enough army to split in half. And, well, it does look like Byun's going to win this, actually. That it does. Lurkers are more cost efficient, and they will be getting an upgrade here. Their range upgrade is going to finish. Looks like they won't get burrow speed. Oh, no, he's going to invest in a burrow speed. I do wonder if burrow speed... I mean, obviously it's important. It's good to have. And he does need to grab a 4th base, so he's going to be moving a little bit more as, you know, if time goes on, I suppose. But it just, it kind of feels expensive at this point, instead of 1 more lurker. Or a Viper, which, I mean, the Viper I think is less important at this point. Now we just have so many Marines. The Viper wouldn't be able to do very much, but yeah, that is going to be a game in Byun's favor. Choosing to attack with the 8 racks, waiting patiently, not really forcing anything prior to the second wave of reinforcements. And then the third wave of reinforcements catching Rogue so much by surprise was really probably the kick in the nuts. I mean, it's always a struggle to balance getting to that late game while also dealing with an 8 racks. We have seen, I think, is that what Maru did in the second game against Rogue? I swear to God, I've cast Rogue dealing with an 8 racks before, very recently. But anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, it's always a hard balancing act, but I do feel like if Rogue had anticipated the attack on his 5th a little bit faster, then maybe he could have responded. I'm not sure about that, just because he didn't have that many units, but certainly the fact that it was a late response does not help your cause. And Rogue, you know, hindsight 2020, could have maybe predicted that. He did give away that run by to kill 20 plus SCVs, knowing that he didn't kill the army when he did that, and that the army was accumulating. But that's very difficult to think of in the midst of a game, in the midst of all the pressure that you're being applied on the 4th base at that time. But yeah, Byun wins game number 1. And game number 2 is here on ley lines. In the bottom left, it is Byun. Top right, it is Rogue. Rogue having a lot of trouble against the 8 racks. Seemed to get to a pretty decent point, you know, for the most of the game, I guess. The macro portion of the game, the non-battle portion of the game. But as Ian Blue was noting in chat, you know, 2-2 was late. He didn't really expedite the Vipers. Seemed like he really had this idea to go into Lurkers, and then kind of as he was getting the option to go into Lurkers was, I think, when the pressure was really ramping up, you know, and then forced to just sacrifice army to try and take out the position on the 4th base rather than doing something, you know, ideally a little more clever, basically. You know, he basically said, okay, I have enough army that I think I can just tackle this, which was true, but probably wasn't the most cost-efficient way to do it. 1 Viper soaking up juice, getting an abduct on even one of the tanks. It was only 2 tanks after all. Would have helped. Obviously, like more lings on the backside trying to kind of catch those tanks is usually also a way that Zergs would deal with it. And then, you know, just basically avoiding as much of the splash as possible. And while the Queens with the Hydras seemed to be pretty tanky, there was definitely some tank fire on the Queens specifically. I made sure to note that. You still are taking a lot of splash damage. You still are, I think, taking a brute force approach, which would only be good if you knew that that was the only thing you had to brute force against. But that's not the only thing you had to brute force against. There are more reinforcements, and whether they came at the 5th or they reinforced the 4th, you know it's on the way because it's an 8 racks. And an 8 racks is often kind of an exhaustion game, one where the Zerg player can get to a pretty fine point right before the 8 racks really starts to hit, but then dealing with the relentless aggression, the relentless trading of the Terran can be very difficult. They give away too many banelings, they can't replace them fast enough, the Marines blitz on you. That's oftentimes how the ARAX wins. Or, yeah, you do start to concentrate your forces in a particularly tricky position, and a second surprisingly large force comes over to your other base, and you're not prepared. I mean, it's not... I'm trying to say it's not really something that you can never predict. And 8-Racks, while not the most popular thing in the world, I suppose, that I think there was a meta where it was more popular, and 8-Racks is rather well known. And the toughness of it is also, I think, well experienced by Zerg players all over the world. And knowing that when you pull the trigger as a Zerg player, when you go, okay, now I can take this on, you have to be damn sure about it, is also, I think, very well known by the Zerg players. They're like, okay, if I'm going to swarm this, I got to really win this battle because they're going to come in with the extra 20 Marines. And that just... Rogue just didn't seem to give... I don't know, not giving enough respect to it, but just basically didn't anticipate, I think, more coming. Or he did, but then obviously didn't react fast enough. Yeah, it's just... I think it might be a little bit of a weakness of Rogue, actually. The later the game goes, whether it's an 8-Racks or a 4th CC, the more that perhaps I'm not as confident. Because even though Rogue has been dominant in, again, those like macro-heavy tournaments that he's won or gotten far in, I do think that's one of the things that would start to fall off as you get older and you return from military. And Byun, well, Byun is also older, and he did also return from military. But one thing he's been consistently good at is the Terran aggression. And 8-Racks kind of fits him very, very well. Particularly brutal point on the last map as well, which shouldn't be understated. That was tricky. Made it a little bit trickier. Well, speaking of tricky, cool. All right, we got a 3cc from Byun. Actually, I think it was the command center first as well. But then into mech, which is very much not Byun-like. Byun does not play mech very often. The good news is it doesn't have the same pace as Bio, which is kind of what eventually got Rogue in the end, was just the relentless aggression of the Marine tank that can really find a lot of effectiveness if it's only 10 Marines and 2 medevacs. There's nothing that's not really equivalent with mech. You can't really find a lot of effectiveness. Well, you can find drones with Hellions, obviously, but you don't bring 2 tanks to the front line as a mech player and say, like, I really got you. You need to have a critical mass of units as mech. So it tends to be a little bit slower, a little less relentless. But that pacing changing, you know, could be a good thing for Rogue if he scouts this. It is going to be battle mech as well, so it's kind of like the in-between, you know, tank mech and bio. It's aggressive, it's out on the map a decent bit, but it still doesn't quite have the same ability to do maximum damage with limited units that bio does, nor does it have that unlimited, I suppose, potential when you get like a fully maxed out tank army, right? But if Rogue were able to detect this, then he could start prepping his mind. He could start thinking about how he wants to deal with this. And unfortunately, right now, he is not scouting it. Seems like everything is normal so far. What could reveal this, actually, is like particularly fast gases at the 3rd, but only, again, if you would scout it. And I'm actually not even sure you have to get that much faster if you're going to go Hellion Cyclone, which... yeah, it feels like it's been a while. I know it's been attempted since last patch. I think there was even a time where people were saying maybe it is really good again. So we got the Cyclone reverted. So it's back to itself what it was, you know, like 2 years ago at this point, I guess. Anyway, Rogue doesn't know about it. Rogue doesn't know about it. Rogue definitely doesn't know about it. He did not see the move outs. He did not see any like gas oddities, because there really isn't. And then, well, the army's coming across the map. That is a lot of Hellions. You know, if we had some roaches here, maybe not the biggest problem. You know, let's say 6 roaches and 4 ravagers would be really helpful here. But if you think it's going to be just good old bio, good old Byun 3CCing into the 8-Racks again, trying to get away with Ling Bane and as little as possible, so you can get up to those 80 drones, well, that would be the goal, and that's what Rogue was going towards. And that's why he's in trouble. Unfortunately, the Queens can only stand up so long against the Cyclones And the Ling Baneling should never really make a connection. Lings are trying to get us around here. Some connections with the Banelings are being made, but you also know that there should be more reinforcements on the way eventually. And we're going to go up to 5 factories as well. Let's start off with just the 3 fact. Byun catching his opponent extremely off guard. Little connections, but then Banelings are pretty expensive. They might not be able to retreat either, although in this case they did, and it's just not the unit composition you want, unless you had a lot of them, and you do successfully get these surrounds. Finally, I would say the best surround possible. The Hellions are now gone, meaning that pure Ling might have a better chance to deal with this, but it looks like Rogue has already taken too much damage. He's lost all of his queens, so no more creep spread. Injects are missing, although that's not really his problem. Drones starting to go down as well. And you need, of course, a critical mass of Lings, too. You can't just throw 10 Lings at Cyclones. You need, let's say, 50 here. And then if you had 50, this would be probably an easy swing. A little split, maybe, against the Banelings this time. Let one Cyclone try and handle this. Rogue trying to get to the center of the Cyclones, of course. And he is going to successfully push us back quite a bit, but how much breathing room is that really? 8 Roaches on the way, Queens being replaced. Rogue is trying to handle this. Looks like he will have to sacrifice the 4th. His 5th is on the way. But this is not a situation where you'd be willing really to sacrifice a base. I mean, if Byun were happy with killing a base and he left, I guess that would be something. But obviously Byun knows he can continue pushing the issue here. Not enough Roach Ravager to help out. No Lings try and get that surround. This is game. Byun with a 1-2 punch. Rogue is kind of set in his ways for game number 2. Probably thinking about all the ways that he could improve more of the mid-game against what he faced last game. Saying, okay, well, I could have done this better, I could have done that after I get to my 4 bases and 80 drones, and then I'll win against it. And then just never scouted Byun's base. That'll happen. That'll happen. Byun wins 2-0 and advances to the winners. And now a new best of 3, the second preliminary match. In the top right, it is Cure. In the bottom left, it is herO. herO doing something a little bit odd. Going for that low ground forward gateway. Hey, we've seen it before, so it's not the oddest thing. But it's not something I've seen in a while, it feels like. You know, we saw this at a time where Protoss players are going for a lot of early aggression. I feel like there was a time where we saw more like proxy gates. Obviously, the max packs existed at some point, where it kind of doesn't now. And the extra, I don't know how many seconds it is, 5 seconds or whatever, that you get, you know, you build the Zealot, you immediately rush it across the map, then you build into your Adeptus Stalker, rush it across the map. That could actually cause a lot of trouble for particularly a 1-Rax CC, especially if they didn't bother building a quick bunker, right? And if they don't scout it, which a lot of Terrans do not scout in this matchup. And you could really offset the Terran without a ton of dedication on the Protoss' side. But then there's that option, which is not what herO's going for. He's not getting the Zealot. There is also something to just having the wall already up at the front. Now, sometimes a wall at the front can be a downside. In that, you know, if there's a tank push, then suddenly your own units are kind of trapped in your own SimCity. But if you are not so worried about that, if you think you can handle that before it gets to your front door, then perhaps what you're more so worried about is like Reaper Hellion. Which, to be honest, does seem to be most of what the Terrans are doing lately. And we do see that Cure is going for a factory expand, something that herO has also confirmed, just with the second supply depot, honestly. And having wall then would easily take care of the Hellion portion. The Reapers could still jump up because you haven't actually walled off the Reaper hop-up, but that isn't as bad. So, you know, the Reaper is going to get maybe some scouting here, and you could have tried to deny that with the high ground, I guess, but if we're thinking a little later on, the wall already being up here is kind of nice. And the Adept is going to just chill in the main. Nah, shouldn't be able to kill the Reaper. Here with a quick reaction. Let's repair the supply depot. This is not anything particularly cheesy. The second command center is on the way for Cure on the high ground. The probe can't quite see it, but that's your prediction as a Protoss player. Hey, thanks for that gifted sub. We got a starport on the way now. As Cure, again, really not dedicating to this. I mean, he's not doing something insane like a 1-1-1 over a command center, but he's also not grabbed those additional Reapers and Hellions. Now, did he change his mind based off what he saw? I don't think so. I did not get the exact timing of the tech lab, but I suppose that could have been an option. He might have just not been planning on doing Reaper Hellion. Cyclone is on the way, and that thing does need a tech lab now, but once it's out, it should deflect this little bit of aggression. Kind of sucks to let a supply depot go down, though. I guess with herO identifying the complete lack of aggression from his opponent, there aren't a lot of Reapers on the field. There aren't any Hellions, even just one trying to get across the map and barbecue some probes. He could send all of his army, as small as it is, to go across the map. And while a Cyclone would beat this back, you can wait on it, which is exactly what herO did. And then honestly, if you really wanted to try and push the issue, you could try and out-micro the Cyclone. Hope that they're a little too eager to get that command center on the low ground. But not herO's choice. herO is going into Blink back at home. Robo's on the way. It is 2 gateways, actually, so should be in the third Nexus up. Lickety split. Banshees are on the way, and it really seems like Banshees are coming more and more into this matchup. Byun's kind of always dotted them around his CVPs, I suppose, but just seems more consistent lately. Bakir's going to bring this out. He's going to do 2 things. They can just straight up do damage, because their observer is out of place is most likely the reason. They usually do have an observer, but it's out of place. And so you just get probe damage. Whee! The other thing it can do, as there's a drop here, is that it can distract. We'll get into that in a second. One stalker already going down. Not expecting the particular drop that Cure set up here. Did have a stalker scouting for something, right? But the Cyclone being able to drop out, get that kill, is kind of a nice thing there. 4 Marines do end up dying. Point is the medevac got away with the Cyclone. That's the most important thing. And 2 probes also died. So back to the distraction point. The Banshees can be a distraction. They can go into the main and force a response, and then there can be an attack on the front. And maybe it wouldn't be a terrible idea either if this was, knowingly a 2-gate. There's a 3rd gate finishing. I'm just unable to add between the production and the structure tab, so that's on me. This is a 3-gate, actually. And so if you knew for a fact it was a 2-gate, maybe you would try and pressure a little bit and do that little 1-2 with the Banshees. But a 3-gate, that has a little more pepper to it. It can be offensive, it can be defensive. In this case, you got a Warp Prism, and the Stalker's already trying to get to work, although not the best job they could have done, I feel like. 3 Stalkers went down. Well, 2. I guess the first one was a Cyclone. I don't think that was the greatest start there for herO. Yeah. And he's not going to all in off of this. There is a Nexus coming down. But he did grab the Warp Prism. He does want to find some, I feel like a little bit more. Although he's also not warping in a lot of Stalkers either. And there is that damage. SCV's getting torn down as Cure wanted to go across the map. I do feel like this is a little more dangerous to do against someone who does have the 3-gate capacity. But there's a caveat, which is that they have to actually be warping in with those gateways. Like you can have this infrastructure to defend, but are you actually building out of it? Are you building this Immortal? Are you building the Stalkers? And are you in position? Because we know that tanks are much better when they're sieged. If you're not already stopping this, yeah, Cure's going for exactly the setup I talked about, the distraction with the Banshees, plus just some straight up damage. 7 probes have already gone down. Into the attack, the Warp Prism with 4 Stalkers, just kind of awkwardly out of position, didn't scout this. Stalkers could be on the front lines a lot of the time, seeing the attack incoming. And then the reinforcing Stalkers were obviously not a lot of them, and they're dealing with the Banshees. So this was, well, about as perfect, I think, as you would ask for. Warp Prism's even under attack somehow. It doesn't lose any hull health, but does reveal that herO has maybe a plan to come on the backside of the tanks. Maybe Cure could send his Banshee to the backside of the tanks to help protect it right now, helping out in the front lines. If the Banshee's not targeted down, it is a lot of DPS. Immortal had its shield pop, so it wasn't as useful as it wanted to be. 3rd tank now arriving that had stayed at home to deal with the little Warp Prism pressure. Colossus comes out, but it gets immediately focus fire. Tanks one for the team, I suppose. The Stalkers do get on top of the tank, but the Immortal is really what you wanted to, and then the Immortal goes down as well because it was dealing with a Cyclone and Marines. I mean, this was messy. This was not a hold at the end of the day. Oh, no. Yeah, no, this is herO dead. He also didn't have a Summon X core for a while. Only he's still rebuilding it, right? So imagine if that Banshee is still alive. There's only 1 Stalker. Oh, there is a Banshee alive! Oh, God! Oh, there's an observer, and it's sieged up, I think. Okay, it does get unsieged. It comes over. Unfortunately, the Banshee was very weak. One soccer does kill it. But if it was healthy, that soccer wouldn't have won. Oh, this is a disaster for herO. Absolute disaster. Cure has also safeguarded his home. He's like, there's no way I'm losing here. Missile turrets on the fronts. Third CC's a little vulnerable, to be fair. Like, they could be canceled, I guess, but that's not enough. A herO is going to see the third CC. Like I said, maybe get a cancel. Actually, he's just going to go for it. He's just going to all in. Yeah, you know. He's going to all in while also waiting for a Dark Shrine. I guess maybe he's thinking this doesn't have to be an all in. There's a chance that the bio number wasn't high enough. And we can see that the SCVs are pulled into this. Kier took this very seriously. He knew that there was perhaps one more power spike from his opponent with the charge lots. And he had yet to accumulate a large enough bioforce, plus combat shield wasn't done, +1 wasn't done. I mean, that was the timing that herO was looking for. But while that hope was that maybe he caught Kier in a very awkward time, the perfect time, really, that didn't happen. And now herO, well, he doesn't have an army, he doesn't have an economy, and he is pretty dead. And Kier is not missing a beat on going for the counterattack either. He knows that that was the last hurrah from herO's army, and that it should be easy peasy from here on out. I think the Dark Shrine was scouted. It was. Even if it wasn't, again, Berserk was built. Kier just needs to stockpile a couple. Oh, free Colossus. Blah. Ooh. Ugh. Not a very good game for herO there. Kier showing how good he is still at TVP. In the top left of Maganatha now, we got Kier. In the bottom right, it is herO. There's a lot of ways that game could have gone differently. There is a way that game could have gone so differently that herO was the one that made Kier look like a fool. Probably not, but then I also wouldn't have guessed that Kier would have made herO ever look that bad. So it's more like there's two ways that a game like that can play out that could heavily favor one race or the other, but no matter what, I wouldn't presume that it would be that bad for one race or another. Like, Kier really won with that tank push. And I would usually not say that. I would be like, oh, yeah, maybe the tank push is effective. But I don't know if it's going to win. Like, I basically won. But the other way that could have gone is that herO invests maybe more into a frontal stalker thing, right? So first of all, doesn't go for the kind of clever positioning on the left side of the map. That did not look cost efficient. I don't believe he got anything really from it except losing his stalkers, right? He blinked out to the left. And then maybe kind of suppressed because of that. Like, okay, these stalker things aren't going to work. He kind of just said, okay, if they're not going to work, then I'm going to go with the Warp Prism shenanigans. I'm going to go into your main. I'm going to just kind of catch a couple of SCVs while macroing back at home, which would usually be a pretty good thing to do. The problem is that timing really didn't work out very well. I mean, herO having zero ideas to the exact timing of the pressure, because you could... I explain what can happen. herO knows what can happen. He knows that a push could come his way. But the exact timing of the Warp Prism harassment, not to scout the exact timing of the push, because if you scout that, if you see that they're on the move, I feel like that's when you do just say, okay, they're on the move, let's get the stalkers on the front lines. Of course, he did eventually realize that the army was on the move, because not a lot of it was responding to the Warp Prism, so that's when he started to go back. But at that same time, the Banshees did appear, and that was another thing that maybe could have gone better, perhaps, if he had scouted the starport faster. Let's say he did the Warp Prism thing faster, went into the main, or he even, again, didn't do the first Blink Stalker attack, instead had all of them jump into the main, which is another option with Blink Stalkers, right? He could have seen that it was Banshees. Then he could have gotten shield batteries back at home and at least dealt with the first Banshee and the two-pronged attack Banshees a little bit easier. And then maybe he does that so easily that he leaves those stalkers that scouted the Banshee on the front lines to see the incoming tank attack and then basically shuts it down by just constantly harassing it as it comes across the map. At the end of the day, what's usually very important for those things is we do have a little bit of an interesting opener from Kier here, which obviously herO just scouted Marauders first here. At the end of the day, really a lot of that type of game can come down to scouting and positioning. herO, I think, would have had all the tools if he had all the knowledge in the world. But he didn't have all the knowledge. And that was one of the most perfect situations for a Terran player, with the defense leading to the immediate counterattack, with the Banshees at the perfect interruption time. I don't think it happens that way again. And Cure is not even going for the same thing again, so definitely not in this game. A couple of Marauders already showed themselves to the Adept, which was recalled out, by the way. And that might not seem terribly helpful, but honestly, Marauders do not kill Adepts that quickly, so even if it tanks a couple of shots, it would be very helpful. herO did take it seriously, too. So shield battery's down. And he was ready to micro Stalkers, focus fire, individual Marauders. He was good to go. We do have this non-robo 3-gate play. I'm going to double check after miscalling the last one. Buildings, count them. 2 + 1. Okay, so 3 gateways, no robo. So he's not going to have that Warp Prism pressure. But, it didn't really work out very effectively last game. He would also not have an Observer, which could have been a problem if this had led into a 1-1-1 with Banshees. The hallucination just confirmed that's not the case. And it's pretty good confirmation, too. Because not only is it confirming the lack of Banshees, you don't need the Observer, you don't need to be worried about your home base right now. It also scouts it to 3 racks, so there's going to be a lot of bio, and the pressure to your base is going to come even later, because it's not Banshees, but it's also later medevacs. But when those medevacs do pop out, they will be with a lot of bio, so you do need to prepare for this. And herO, he's going to send some Stalkers out on the map now that Blink is done. Again, if he had all of these Stalkers built and then just positioned right on the front, they would have seen that attack incoming. The Banshee still would have tripped them up, but he would have tried to corral the attack, incoming attack. In this case, with it being primarily bio, that is a tall task for Stalkers. Yes, you can bait stims when stim is on, but you have to be extremely careful. Really gotta be paying attention here. It's not just 5 Marines covering a couple of tanks. This is a little more than that. Sim is almost done. Combat Shields is almost done. Rogerslav obviously was already done. And Cure's just gonna pull the boys. It's just good old-fashioned 3-1. Oh, boy. All right, tanks on the way. herO is going to use his Stalkers just to go for the production. Gonna find a reinforcing tank. He's gonna lose a Stalker for it, but this is a lot of damage for Cure to take. Recall is going to happen. hero's going to try and hold on to his 3rd. Force fields will come down. Recharge gave him 3, which is pretty much exactly what he needed. The tanks will siege up. Will eventually push past these force fields. That was a crucial amount of time buying. All of the bio, stimming on top of the Stalkers that were just recalled, would have been a disaster. And we see that Cure is being very patient with his stim. There's no healing from here. herO's also being patient, trying to warp in as much as possible. Got all these Zealots on the front lines already. Stim's obviously popped, but that is a lot to chew through with the probes pulled as well. The Zealots are starting to dissipate. The Guardian Shield probably was amazing here. That probably made the Zealots last so much longer. Probes too, honestly. But this is a worthwhile trade for herO if he can keep the 3rd base alive, if he can take care of this army, which is exactly what he is doing. No contest at this point. And Cure's all in does not work. And it really was. Even though it killed, they both lost the exact amount of workers. Having that 3rd base and almost twice the army supply puts herO in a bit of a better position. Completely roboless too, by the way. Just, isn't the usual thing that happens. But it's worked out here. Charge was pretty fast. The amount of Zealots he could gather was also pretty good for that early on in the game. What was that, like 6:15 or something? That's pretty damn early. Usually a Terran player, I think with this kind of build, is really hoping that the Protoss player A doesn't see it incoming, obviously, as we're watching the final death throes of Cure here. But then B just simply is like crucially gaining seconds to just barely eke out enough units, which herO's force fields really helped with. But even so, you still feel the possibility that herO is just a little too shy on the unit count. And that just wasn't the case here. herO, with those force fields, came in kind of a overwhelming favorite into the scenario. Good pro pool as well, just to ensure victory at the end of the day. We could see how one-sided it would end up being after the dust cleared. And that was a good decision as well, because there's also kind of no reason. Like, they're clearly giving their own recipes away. Might as well pull the probes. That was Kira trying to catch herO off guard a little bit again. Kind of same-ish idea, different execution. herO's slight build order change, helping him out, and then the emergency response with the sentry recharge, and having a second sentry with a Guardian Shield made that pretty damn perfect. GG's. I'm thinking Neon Blue because it is something that is so easy to get, theoretically. You know, like, you'd have to explain to people how it can be a challenge to get to Guardian Shield, which I guess I'll do in this map. Final map's going to be Ley Lines, bottom left Kira, top right herO. And just talking more about that Guardian Shield, which I was like, that probably was absolutely huge. It most certainly was. You know, someone in chat is asking, you know, like, why don't we give more credit to him? And here's my theory anyway. It's that it can look so easy to grab, right? It's not the most technical skill you'll ever see is getting a sentry and then having it pop its Guardian Shield. Like, wow. But of course, what really makes it a highlight is oftentimes the actual fact of getting a sentry with the energy of Guardian Shield. Again, it sounds so simple, but honestly, it can be a challenge. There are plenty of builds that, up to a certain point, would not be able to give the gas to a sentry. It would be a decision you make to say, okay, I need a sentry to get those force fields, or I need a sentry to get that Guardian Shield. And, you know, if you don't scout something in time, then perhaps you don't have the time to make that decision. You've invested all of your gas into, you know, these upgrades that you got, or into the Colossus you're trying to get, or into a couple more Blink Stalkers. So I think that's kind of why it's like, if the sentry's on the field, we're all just kind of like, oh yeah, Guardian Shield, yeah, it's good. But it is, I think, more about the ramp up to it, which I think is also kind of a whole Protoss problem, actually. You know, in general, StarCraft is a very complicated game for all the races, and good people and good commentators, good players, sorry, will point out all these things that lead up to the thing. The tiny things that lead up to the big thing. Like, that's the goal of commentating, I would guess. Kind of. Some parts of it, anyway. But I think Protoss has always gotten the shortest end of that stick, where, you know, especially in pre-Legacy of the Void times, watching a Protoss player get to a death ball was never particularly invigorating. You're like, well, congratulations, that looked easy as shit. This is why Protoss is stupid, and that's why Protoss also gets the most hate. Well, some of the reason. They're also the cheesiest. But anyway. But, you know, again, someone who actually knows a lot about the game would probably see all these tiny little intricate details as to why the eventual Protoss Death Ball 200-200 and Wings of Liberty, it was actually a challenge. It was actually just a well-played Protoss game. But it is so easy to look at those games and be like, wow, Protoss, wow. But look at the Terran. The Terran had to be like, zip, 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 zip. The Protoss just stood there. But it's a little more complicated than that. But yeah, the Guardian Shield, I think also sometimes the Guardian Shield doesn't affect the battle. Not because they didn't pop it, but because sometimes those Zealots like to just chase the Bio Army forever and ever and ever. And the Guardian Shield is, like, lagging behind. So that's all sometimes I think we don't say it. And then, yeah, again, sometimes you just don't have a Guardian Shield. Whoops! Saw that here. Onto this game, though. Onto this game. herO, he did go for a very safe opener. Extremely safe. He went Adept, which can obviously straight across and get the Scout, but it doesn't have to if your next plan is to get a Sentry. So assuming this wasn't a proxy 2-Rax, this would guarantee Scout anything suspicious. Anything off of 2 bases, guaranteed Scout it. Anything that's not a 2-Rax off of 1 base would also Scout it, I believe. So, you know, if this was like a 1 base 1-1-1. So this is a very, very safe opener for herO. I guess he might be a little concerned that Kira is going to get progressively faster on the all-ins. That's kind of what happened, I guess. I think the actual attack might have been similarly timed between the 2 games, but maybe the second game was a bit faster. Anyway, clearly Cure's doing something very aggressive, right? Clearly Cure is trying to hit herO before herO gets comfortable, and that comfortable is on 3 bases, saturated, getting to your Colossus. And that does seem to really be the current issue amongst TVPers, where the early game, maybe you can find that damage and then it makes the mid-game easier, but if you are to play a regular, typical, here's my Woodamine drop, here's my Reaper Hellion thing, and it doesn't find damage, you have a lot of trouble on 3 base versus 3 base. So it does seem like Cure's priority to do, you know, probably exactly what herO is suspecting. herO scouts all of his opponent's buildings, but doesn't know exactly when the attack is incoming, doesn't have Blink, so he doesn't have his Stalkers out in the field, and thus does not intercept this, which does suck. It does suck, because like I think this was the whole goal, is not being caught by surprise like this. But the sentry did not do a second hallucination, that did not see the actual attack moving out, and again, once that tank is sieged in a nice position, it is difficult for very early game Protosses to take care of it. You also note that Blink was not particularly fast. 505, it can be finished as fast as like what, 440, 430 maybe even, if you chrono it and whatnot, on a less, I think, on a non-sentry opener. So that's a bit unfortunate here for herO, who doesn't lose the game, but losing that 3rd Nexus, very much his intent was to get the 3rd Nexus up and running. That is painful. The Stalkers went across the map. I don't know if they were hoping to find the army, but they find the SCVs undefended. That means the army is on the front lines. Can herO hold on the front lines? Shield battery plus Guardian Shield would be pretty baller, but of course Cure does the right thing and target fires the shield battery. The sentry will not have a recharge by the looks of it. No second Guardian Shield. Might not need it though. The Stalkers were recalled. They do come in, target fire those tanks, get the medevac. Guardian Shield would still be so helpful here, but it does look like there's enough army. herO did continue investing into his production. He did get up to 3 gateways while he was getting that 3rd Nexus, so he did have the ability to make units. That was still a little scary, with Cure getting so close to the siege tanks, lack of Guardian Shield. That was a good hold. Cure, what is the thought process at this point in time? Did he do enough damage with this? Because not only did he not grab that fast of a 3rd CC, if he does in this game even, maybe just 2 base SCV pulls, he also didn't grab his technology. He didn't grab Stim Combat Shields and +1. Whoops, kind of sucks he had to 2-shot that tank, but the tank does go down. Bunker will finish though, and that will save the natural, but the main, only protected by a single tank. I guess SimCity as well, and the SimCity is good. Little micro here from herO. He thinks it's worth it to go after these add-ons and a sacrifice of what is currently 2, almost 3 Stalkers. These add-ons, well, probably should have gotten this one too. I was going to say, obviously, they stopped the tank production. That is pretty important. The starport maybe isn't as scary if you can. If you get enough Stalkers to look down a Banshee, it's not the scariest thing in the world. But then also there was that idea that it could have further delayed Stim and Combat Shields. Which, it, you know, still delays Combat Shields, I guess. But herO, behind that little aggression, did get a 3rd Nexus. Got a Warp Prism as well, going into Storm. I don't know if Cure's going to anticipate that. Cure is going to get a 3rd CC. I think if you were planning on 2 base all-inning from, you know, the point that he was at, that would just be so stupidly late. It wouldn't work. You know, you're going to wait for Stim the entire time and then pull the SCVs. But having him get a 3rd CC and play out a macro game, I don't know if that really feels that great either. Just the complete lack of pressure while you wait for all these upgrades to finish could be where herO thrives. And herO is also going for a technology that Cure might not be aware of. Just kidding, the Banshee immediately scouts it. So that's good news. This might actually, in a weird, I mean, this actually might be kind of nice for the Terran perspective, as the Banshee just sacked itself on probes and a cloak was made. That was 3 Banshees made? Holy shit, I missed a lot. 3 Banshees made and died, too. Damn. Totally missed that. Storm comes in, kills 7 SCVs. An instant rebuttal there for herO's dead probes. All right. Going back to what I was thinking. So Storm can kind of sometimes be like a stopgap. I mean, it's not the thing that you're going to depend solely on for the entirety of a game, because EMP does still pretty directly counter it, even after all of its nerfs. So that's why I'm like, well, maybe this actually isn't the scariest thing in the world. If you are turtling anyway, trying to get your upgrades, trying to get your third CC, you still have a couple of tanks to help you, and you wait till you have those ghosts, I mean, you will have a fairly direct counter. Of course, I'm still scared of this push. herO does still have a lot of army. It's not that much bigger than his opponents, though. Most of the deficits in Cure supplies and workers. Yeah, good scan on the Observer. Don't give them free vision. hero's gonna go for it, though. A couple of Wood Mines are in play. Little Sim City as well. I do like that, but the Storm's hitting the Marines perfectly. Opening up the opportunity for the tank to go down, too. Immortal coming in at a very awkward angle is sacrificed for almost nothing. And the second tank stayed alive, too. I think Cure handled that pretty damn well. I mean, herO, I think, had good ambitions. And he's going to still try and do this again here, but he's... I don't know if he's going to really make any headway. Cure now has all of his upgrades finished as well. Combat shields and +1. He's got a good number of medevacts, and that tank really does help to anchor this defense. The pre-spread as well is really good. You know, keeping those Marauders on the front, Marines in the back. Oh my god, he's going to move out? Wow, okay. I'd be terrified to do that. Let's see if Cure has got it right. Wood Mines do burrow. Going to have that against the Zealots. One more Storm is available. Hits the heart of the army on the top side. Bottom side also gets hit by a Storm. That is officially the last one, and that might have been good enough too. Cure... gonna have to tap out. GG's. I guess he figured there had to be a time where he had to push into his opponent and had to get him off his back. Otherwise, herO would just continue rallying his Colossus, as well as his, you know, continue reinforcing with the Zealots. I still don't... Yeah. That is a hard game to play. He was in a very unideal position after his attack into the natural was thwarted. I do wonder if unsieging and going after the army was the right call. Or further turtling could have helped him. It's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. So, yeah. That good on herO. herO 2-1s advances to the winners to face Byun. And here is the winners match. In the bottom left, it is herO. And on the top right, we got Byun. So we just saw herO get a 2-1 victory over Cure. Byun's first match was a TVZ, which he executed pretty flawlessly. Different matchup, but it was perfect in its, I think, strategy and execution. 8 racks in the first game, surprise mech in the second game. Rogue didn't seem to have a chance. But it is a very different matchup. And I don't know if Byun's feeling particularly confident in this matchup either. Cure, he's definitely not as godlike as he was in the matchup once upon a time. I think he's still one of the better players in the matchup, and that's good, but it does come kind of with that caveat, which is that he did still seem kind of desperate in the game. You know, the early attacks, one of them worked. So, you know, desperate has a really negative connotation to it. So it's like, yeah, one of them works, then how can you really be negative on it? But I think it's just the amount of early game attacks combined with the other knowledge, the other matches I've cast of this matchup that really does tell me that Cure wanted to find the damage before 3 base Protoss. Because that can be the trickiest part. Or let's even be more specific and say 3 base herO. That could be the trickiest part. And, well, 2 of those games, he didn't quite find it. That's a big reason why he lost those 2 games. He decided to go for something early, pretty all in, didn't work out, not much more you can do beyond that. My gut tells me that Byun will do something pretty similar. Byun's not had the grandest of times in all the TVPs he's been playing in all these open cups, for instance. I just don't know if you can try and make all these earlier attacks work against herO over and over and over again. herO clearly got a handle enough in the last series against Cure to eke out the victory. And then now he's even more prepped for early game aggression. probe's going to scout that it is a 1-Rax, actually. Despite being on the high ground, it was a 1-Rax expand. Very safe opener from Byun. Hero's going to go for his own Twilight Council, see if he also adds on that Robo or plays like a previous game versus Cure. Oh, the poor probe. No! Tried to hide, and it failed. The Stalker is not going to be able to kill the Reaper, I'm pretty sure. Well, wait. Nope, it is. Don't! It's 2 health. That was definitely very close. And herO wants to kill this Reaper and put Byun in a real difficult spot as far as determining if this is going to be a 2-gate or a 3-gate or hell, even a 4 gates. Because presumably it is a Twilight Council, though Byun doesn't know that for sure. But if it is, then what is it leading into? herO is once again going to go for the Robo-less build. Oh no, there it is, okay. Robo coming in after the 3 gateways were built. So he most likely is going to get that Warp Prism, try and go for the attack, and this time be a little more on guard about anything that could be coming his way. Byun simply putting up a medevac drop with a couple of Widow Mines. Might bring his Marines, or even just like send them across the map. But again, the Reaper didn't get any scouting. Despite living for a little while longer to eventually get found out and killed, they got no scouting. I feel like the instinct is going to be just to turtle for the most part. Well, let's see how this goes. herO is grabbing the Observer first. Medevac drops heading this way. Stalker, I think, was actually going to try and meet it. Almost well-timed. Almost well-timed. Not quite, though. Realizes that he's already missed it. He does send those Stalkers to the main base. I didn't know for a fact it was on the way, but just, you know that he was figuring it could be. And so he doesn't get everything perfectly positioned, but he's going to take care of it. Blink just finished up, allowing him to blink what a mine, and he's going to get the Medevac as well. This is not uncommon. Oh, Byun was going to try and move out. This is not an uncommon way for the Widow Mine drop to open, which is to say that a failure. I think in the past, totally confident that a Terran player would be able to, you know, kind of let that one go and then just macro and still have a fairly fine game. But to my point earlier, it just feels like when these simple early game aggressions, the most expected ones, don't work out, the Terran player often pulled into a position where they're defending on 3 base, and then the Protoss, in this case herO, it's kind of just like a wild time expanding and preparing his own aggression on Byun's 3rd. Yeah, Byun was preparing to move out, but I think with the fact that Widow Mine got shot down so quickly, he knew the Stalkers weren't going to be busy. They weren't going to be stuck up in the man or the natural waiting for it, so he just gave up on the idea entirely, plus he saw that it wasn't a 3rd Nexus. So, yeah, the tank push would not have worked. So many Stalkers would have been available, and so many Stalkers are available now. There is some SimCity to help out. Stalkers are very hesitant to blink into this one. If they could try and go after the natural, technically, if they get the bunker, then they get the tank, but getting the tank first would be pretty bad, I think. Would lose a lot of Stalkers for that. But the good news for herO is that he really doesn't have to force the issue. Well, yes, he did invest into quite a few Stalkers. His 3rd Nexus is on the way. Robotics Bay and Forge coming down now. And he does have the option to find a couple of SCVs on the Warp Prism. This is just him now controlling the scenario, though. There's not much that Byun should be doing at this point, except for denying any amount of damage. Waiting for his upgrades, waiting for his bio. So this is completely normal. But it does put, I think, herO in a bit of a safer, more comfortable position, shall we say. His Stalkers are on the front, so if there's that surprise tank move out, he's on it. The Warp Prism gives him not just the option to do what he already did, but also further harassment down the line. Going after the tank was a choice. I guess he actually didn't lose too much for it. Nice little micro there with the 1 Stalker blinking in first and whatnot. It was pretty nice. But this is Byun's time, as his upgrades are finishing and the army is moving out to try and find some crucial damage on herO's side of the map. herO's Warp Prism, as I was trying to point out, just now has the threats of it alive. Like, Byun has to always worry about that Warp Prism coming in and getting a couple of charge lots into his main base. Charge isn't done. We know that. But Byun also knows that the Stalkers are particularly eager to time buy. So maybe they'll buy enough time for charge to be done. One more soccer did go down right there, but now we got force fields as well to buy that time. Looks like he kind of wanted to go for the fight, but then the zealots were stuck and they didn't have charge anyway. So I don't know if that was like a single hotkey issue or what. It doesn't actually force field this away. Figures that this is going to come at him eventually anyway, and wants the Guardian Shield, but a little more awkward. Actually, very awkward for the Terran. Combat Shields was nowhere near completion. Not really what you want to have going on as charge is finishing and the Colossus is out. And the Colossus will particularly go after the Marines, which have been injured because of the stalkers. What am I taking out as well? Warp Prism actually comes to the front. Might want to be a little careful about that. It's actually trying to scout by the looks of things. He was definitely controlling it, at least past the first second. But if it's coming towards the front, it means that we're going to have that contain happening now. So it's not going to go into the main, try and go for that, but it can. It always could. But right now, reinforcing on the front lines. Byun trying to build his 3rd CC on location, trying to guard that, as he did not give up a lot of his army, really any of his army, on the attack. 2 tanks, nice position, army spread out, Raven even available, although it does not have the interference matrix. Like, this is a pretty good holding army. And this is where herO grabs the 4th base. Doesn't actually go up to 3 Colossus, decides that he wants to disrupt there faster. Which I guess I don't. Yeah, okay. It's definitely a choice. I see benefits for both. 2 forges now as well, pumping out 2 upgrades. Gonna have 2 robos eventually too. And it looks like herO doesn't really want to stay on the field so much. He's not going to be able to push into Byun. But then again, Byun won't be able to find a lot to do on the other side of the map. Byun is going to try, sending his little squad of units out to even just try and catch pylons. As we can see, herO is dotting the map with pylons off to the bottom right. It's a good move. You know, as the Protoss army is entirely pulled back, you do have some freedom here, but he actually scans ahead, sees the army still back at home, decides that he wants to try and push out against this. The Observer's going to catch that. herO's going to be very well positioned. How did that live so long with a Raven available, by the way? It did. But can Byun really push into this? herO just actually sends the Zealots across, just right by him. I guess if the army wasn't here, and it's not attacking the Zealots here, then the Zealots might as well try and go over here. It wasn't really that open of an opportunity. Oh, but it's 2. Oh, it's 2 and 1. Warp Prism to go into the main base. Managed to drop off a couple of Zealots. Excellent response. Very quick response from Byun, however, on both angles. The Zealots on the 3rd kind of had to dawdle. So Byun had the time to unsiege his tanks and respond to the 3rd as well, forcing herO to recall out. It would have been a very expensive loss. We're not quite at that point where herO can throw away 8 Zealots, no problem. But as herO grabs a 5th base, we could get to that point eventually. Byun's 3rd CC saturated, 4th is now on the way as well. Byun going for a very slow and steady push. Anti-armor missile still very helpful. How many Vikings do we have? 6. I would say 8 is a nicer number for 2 Colossus, and that's exactly what Byun has gotten to, is 8. These also might stay at home to deal with the Warp Prism, but the Warp Prism chilling off to the side currently is just sending the Zealots in on the field, I suppose, on the ground. That is a 6th base, which isn't necessary, but it might get up, surprisingly, as Byun is obviously going to be focused on the engagement. Nope, he does move over, and that should be very easy to cancel. Disruptor's trying to get some good shots. So far, missing the opportunity, but we do have 5 Disruptors. Stalker's also not target firing the Vikings. Allow 1 or more Colossus to go down. 1 Colossus still stands, but that is a lot of Marauders that are still pretty healthy. Medevac's full of energy as well. Byun's slow and steady methodical push working out to some degree. Managed to kill the 4th base. I can't believe this. This is why I said, surprisingly, this will live. Because this happens so often, actually. And every time, I'm still surprised. I'm like, it'll happen, but I'm still surprised. Why is that base up and running? Who the hell knows? But Byun is now forced to return home, dealing with their own problem at his 3rd CC. The 4th has already been lifted. It's already done. It's actually really nice. No longer have to worry about that, but it is missing maybe some city, or perhaps he had to lift that anyways to get a concave. It's a tough decision at this point for Byun. Having this army with the Disruptor count where it's at, already up against your choke, makes the engagement a little bit more difficult. But here we go. The Zealots are doing a pretty nice job so far, but they are starting to thin out here. Upgrade advantage for herO, but on the attack, which means the Zealots So only that +1 armor do get thinned out. Once the Zealots are thinned out, holy shit, that was a good one. That was a good one. That was a lot of blood right there from one Disruptor. The Zealots get thinned out. The rest of the Protoss army does not stand up very long. But herO, recognizing that, sent those Zealots to their death, wanted to get as much damage as possible with them, then pulled the Disruptors back and prepared the Stalkers to go on a bit of a micro hunt. It was really nice anticipation. He kind of saw into the future by, 5 seconds that this is how it's probably going to play out. I know I'm not going to win at this point. The army is too healthy. It's too big. It's too solid, basically. It wasn't going to be surrounded at any point. And so he did prepare the evacuation. So he holds on to a 20 supply lead. Now, 10 of that is in the worker count. But 10 of it is an army as well. And again, those upgrades are going to favor herO for the next, 3 minutes or whatever, until they're both maxed out, really. Byun might be finishing his 2-2, but herO is finishing his 3-2. He's also gone back into Colossus. He's gone back into Colossus in a big way as well, and I actually really like this. All the Vikings have been killed. Going up to 4 Colossus is usually more than you expect from a Protoss player, but I think with the Vikings all gone, and I think the difficulty of actually burning through the medevac energy and the bio health, I think 4 Colossus will do that pretty damn quickly. 2 Colossus don't really burn through Marauders super fast, but 4? I mean, that's just an inarguable good amount of AoE. And obviously the Vikings are missing. And that is really the biggest sore point here, is Byun only just now getting back to his Viking production, only off of 2 starports. He actually runs into the Zealots to try and kill the Disruptors. Oh, that is just the unideal situation. Oh no, that wasn't it, I don't think. A lot of Stalkers did just go down there. That planetary shot killed like 4 weak Stalkers right there. Disruptor also left behind. But that was a tough call. Disruptors are the prize a lot of the time. They're expensive, they're slower building. You get them out of the equation, you don't have to worry about it so much. But, oh my god, to just run your army into Zealots. Superiorly upgraded Zealots as well. Superior upgrades as well. That is tough, but he didn't want to lose the choke to his opponent's Disruptors, I think, is what, he didn't want to lose his positioning, be forced behind his planetary, and let the Protoss army just continue killing his planetary, Like, that was, I think, the decision had to be made in a split second. But it still cost him so much. Byun, unfortunately, is on 4 bases, though. Like, he is mining from them, so there is a chance he can recover his supply. herO has not bothered rebuilding his 4th, by the way. He was content having his 5th and his 6th, and now a 7th. And now he's going on to an 8th, actually. And unfortunately, while Byun has done an admirable job in this game, it is not going to be good enough. herO just amassing wealth behind these engagements. It is far too rich. GG. herO wins game 1. Game number 2 is going to be on Tokamak. Bottom left is herO, top right is Byun. So Byun, he tries to... basically going to do the opposite of what Kira did. Kira was pretty eager to stop herO before herO got started. And he tried. He really tried. Didn't work out, though. Byun plays a gentleman's game. A very basic Terran versus Protoss. Widowmine drop... pretty safe opener, high ground command center, but Widowmine drop into tanks to deflect the Blink Stalkers, into not really choosing to engage. When it was the question was asked, should I push or should I hold? Byun said hold almost every single time, right? But then he did get to EMPs. He did get to a very good bio count with a good number of medevacs too, and he did do a push, and that managed to kill a 4th base. Should have also canceled a 5th, but whatever. But that still didn't win him the engagement, not in a really significant way. I mean, perhaps if I looked at the resources lost, perhaps Byun had technically won the engagement around the 4th, because he did kill a good number of units, the 1 Colossus, a couple Disruptors, however many Zealots, and the Nexus. But that's not enough to stem the bleeding is not the right word, but it's not enough to hold back the Protoss. The Protoss herO was still grabbing those 2 extra bases. So even if the 5th was canceled, like it probably should have been, there was another one on the way. And it didn't stop the ability to remake an army that could go across the map and could catch Byun in the defensive position, which as soon as the Terran gets into a defensive position, it's kind of the unfortunate position. Which might be kind of the crux of the problem right now for TVP. It is basic TVP, what we just saw, which is that, yeah, once you've kind of given up on aggression, there's not really a point in time where it's particularly wise to be aggressive. This is what it feels like, certainly, you know, from all the TVPs we're watching that do go to 3 or 4 bases. Whereas usually, you know, in StarCraft, the game is relatively even. The idea is that a good decision to defend could lead to the good decision to attack, and vice versa, I suppose. But it kind of feels like once you defend, you're just defending as a Terran player. And for someone like Byun, who is generally more aggressive, really has fun microing his units, you know, I don't think that's a good situation for him. And it does seem to be the situation, like capitals here, for Terrans who play that macro game. I know there's some examples of Terrans winning against Protoss guys, like, but I do think there is a bit of a problem. There's a bit of a sticky point on that 3 base Terran versus the increasingly 4, 5, 6, 7 base Protoss. So we might see some of the best Terrans in the world not do that. They will instead go for the early aggression and either try to severely hamper their Protoss opponent or straight up win before the 3 bases. This is not a 1-1-1. The command center is up, just way back, and the Stalkers did see it, or something saw it anyway, so this was not as tricky as perhaps Byun was hoping for. You can kind of, to a certain degree, you can tell. If you have this aggression going on, that herO does, you can get a scout as well, just by how many units respond. And in this case, you know, the Hellions showed themselves, so. That Stalker is a goner. Yeah, okay, maybe the second Stalker could have been saved. It looks like herO is okay with these trades as he continues rallying the Stalkers across the map. He just recognizes, I think, that Byun doesn't have good units right now. There is no Cyclone, there is no tank, there is no Banshee, which is kind of a good unit in low unit scenarios, and Marines aren't plentiful. So herO's, I guess, okay, because he did just completely get rid of the opener, which might have been 2 Hellions trying to run across the map, trying to, you know, catch him off guard. He might contribute to a lackluster medevac drop. We know that Byun is not going for one, but for all herO knows, this could have been a planned Hellion drop. And now he just killed all the Hellions. So, Observer instantly spotted. It does get that scout on... I don't know, actually. It pretty much saw exactly what I think herO already figured. But hey, it saw a tank, you know, so the tank is out. herO's next scouting will come with his War Prism. He did go for not Blink Opener. Not Blink Opener. So there was all those Stalkers produced from the early game trying to apply that aggression, delay the command center a little bit. They did. But that was off of kind of a low technology opener. So the Robo did come down first. There's going to be plenty of Observers, and Immortal's going to come out as well. Blink will not be available, but there is still a War Prism. So definitely a bit of a different opener from herO. He's going to scout a pretty quick 3rd CC, actually. Most Terran players are going 3 racks, 1-1 into 3rd CC. So that's a scout for sure. And yeah, I guess you don't cancel the Immortal, but I feel like with that scout, you can feel even more at ease at getting to your prime position, getting to your 3rd Nexus, and perhaps even 4th Nexus before Byun's really ready to attack. Going for the Raven only to scan the Obs first is a play. When you see it, you go for it, okay? Terrans don't usually think that much. No, I'm just kidding. No, that is kind of funny, though. He probably could have just waited. Although, it might have actually been because of the 3rd CC. I am totally willing to believe that Byun just saw an Observer and was like, boom, scan. But I am also willing to believe that he was incredibly eager to stop any form of scouting. I could believe that. That 3rd CC is a different build. Either way, you know, the Raven's here now. Barracks obviously very delayed when you do this. So again, the Protoss player's not that scared of a direct attack. A little harassment here and there, as you see from the Raven, caught a single probe. It's not Blink first either, by the way, which I wonder if that was going to be the plan. You know, you're going to see these Stalkers. You're going to see what looks like a pretty typical build, although War Prism was very fast, and I think Byun knows that. Still, you might expect Blink to be done first. It is not. So this is going to be... Usually, if you do this as a Protoss player, this is where we talk about the Terran being able to take advantage of that lack of anti-air. Mobile anti-air specifically, right? They're going to push in, and the Stalkers can't chase them back. They're going to drop into the main, and the Stalkers can't hurriedly go over there. But Charge Colossus is just a punch-in-the-face composition. So sometimes the Terran player does do all the Super Saiyan medevac drops and whatnot in the situation, and they get damage done, but then the punch in the face comes. Other times, the Terran goes Super Saiyan and actually does too much damage, the punch in the face comes, they still hold, and they win the game. But that's when you don't go for a third CC this quickly. So I feel like herO... He was already going for a late Twilight Council. This might have been his plan from the get-go, but it just feels like you can skip that blink. Byun is not going to be pushing you with a lot of medevacs anytime soon. Well, now soon, but when this started, anytime soon. So you can really get away with that. And blink will eventually come. You do still need it against Vikings. And in general, I suppose. So, yeah. herO going up to the 4th base. Double upgrades. Colossus number 2 is on the way. Already got 2 Immortals, by the way. As I said, herO getting up to a 4th base even before Byun's first attack. Maybe he even gets a 5th. Now that sounds insane, but I actually wouldn't be surprised. It's kind of the way that Protoss is playing right now. It's almost a little more Zergy. Not in the swarm aspect, but just in the expansion, being ahead of your Terran opponent by 1 expansion at any given time. Probably even 2. That's the way it goes now. This auto-turret harassment is surprisingly effective. 8 probes have been killed so far. 2 stalkers as well. Way to go, Raven. With the riches that herO has accumulated off of a very macro opener, he is investing into all the things, including War Prism speed, which he did get last game. I forgot to note it, but that War Prism was zipping and zooping around. And then we got Byun, who obviously also kind of almost instigated, in a sense, this very macro game, also getting as much as he can off of the riches he has accumulated. But to be honest... This might be my Terran bias speaking. It still feels more dangerous for the Terran. It's like they're both doing the thing. They're both doing the thing that they want to do. But it still feels more dangerous. I've just seen so many of these mid to late game TVPs not work out well for the Terran player. If we're talking about equally skilled players. Maybe I should be highlighting more how good herO is and being local. herO is the guy you don't want to do this against. But... Well, he is one of the best, if not the best, Protoss players. Always arguments, right? It's like kind of a lot of Protoss players I think would also be in an okay position seeing this go down the way it has. They have a clear vision. The Terran player, I feel like right now, has a little bit of an unclear vision where it does feel like the Terran's a little more hesitant, a little less in control, and again, a little more desperate. You know, Cure showed all those early game all-ins. Byun going for a super macro game doesn't scream desperate. You're like, what's desperate about that? But it kind of feels like this is just trying to offset pacing. The way that the pacing of TDP used to go is a typical 2-base versus like maybe 3rd base butting setup, or 3rd base butting for both players, let's say. And then the Terran player does like 2 drops and attacks in the front, and the Protoss player barely holds. Right, but we just don't see that very much anymore. War Prism goes into the main as soon as Byun's army moves out to just tickle the 5th base that barely even stood around. And the War Prism does find some success. It does go down, however. So some success is about right. 3 tanks are available. Disruptor decides they just realized it couldn't go after the tanks. It was not close enough to do so. So herO is not going to find a lot of headway here. So maybe hoping that Byun was a little underprepared. Maybe he had moved his tanks away. Not the case. But herO, you know, he loses a couple of units here. He's actually down in resources lost, but he has a 5th base. So he's up to 77 probes. Going to be up at 82. Maybe he stops there, maybe doesn't. Adding on some static defense as well. But it does look like Byun is more so hoping that a direct push, as slow and steady as you can be, is going to win him the game. And one thing does stay the same across the last, like, 9 years. If a Terran player gets a really good concave or a surround, the Protoss army does melt. The Protoss army is not as chonky as we like to think in our own games. as Terran players. As Protoss players, you would also agree. You'd be like, yeah, it's thin as shit. But that's where, again, it's kind of almost like a little more Zergy, where you're like giving away a lot of these maybe lower tier units like Zealots, hopefully saving the higher tier ones, and then just repeating that, rinse and repeat. But if the Terran player gets a really good engagement, it can be such a good engagement that they do win the game off of it. That can still happen. It just gets progressively harder the more bases you have to kill and the more money in the bank the Protoss has. Both armies very equal in size, but actually a little bit ahead. But upgrades currently favoring the Protoss by a decent amount, 3-2 versus 2-1. That's actually very good for herO. But I think it's picked up on it, no doubt clicking the units, realizing, plus there's just so many units not helping. They're currently attacking rocks, desperately trying to get a surround on this army. That's why he was doing that. But it took so long, he didn't even actually kill the rocks, that he's forced to respect the army, bring his entire one forward into this choky position. That kind of sucks there for Byun. Maybe hindsight, you kill those rocks quicker, but then you do open another pathway for Zealot run-bys. Now you're starting on the healthier rocks. No! Byun now down in supply, still down in those upgrades. Disruptors, I think some of them have gone down. Yeah, maybe a little careless with the disruptor control, but it's fine. herO is up to 5, 6, 7 bases. Byun is not going to be on 4 for very long, methinks. Immortals helping to punch through this planetary, and now helping to punch through the Marauders that are left over after all the fights. Those are the only things really left over. And while the Marauders have found themselves in a nice little position, it's still just so much Protoss army. War Prism warping in more and more Zealots. A prepared Stargate transition, should herO need it, is on the way. If he doesn't, this is game. GG. Yeah, this is roughly what these two have looked like playing in the Open Cups as well. Byun looks worse in this matchup, and he often does bring out the more macro play, but it only works against Protosses who don't properly expand, aggress, and harass. But if you're facing, the world's best Protoss, well, they're going to know how to do all of those things very, very well. So, yeah, it's kind of the same story over and over again. Byun is going to have to try his luck versus the other guys, which I think he will have a lot more luck against. I think he'll be better against Cure and Rogue. But we'll see who he faces, because herO advances out, and now we're going to go into Rogue versus Cure. And here is the losers match. In the top left of Persephone, it is Cure. And on the bottom left, we have Rogue. I don't feel extremely confident for Rogue here. I think ZVT is a little bit weak for him, against the top Korean Terrans, which is what you're going to find in GSL. But then again, even though Cure didn't manage to beat a couple of Zergs, I think in his group as well as the qualifiers, so it's not like it's a terrible matchup for him, I do still think it's a surprisingly bad matchup. It's not bad, but it's just surprisingly not as good as the rest of them for Cure. I've seen too many TVZs from Cure where he looks, you could argue, too patient. I kind of read it as a little scared. And he does lose games from that. Like there's one versus Dark where he had an almost, it looked like an unbeatable position on the map that's like Golden Wall. I forget what it's called. El Dorado. And he didn't really push it. It looked like such a good position. And he just kind of stood around. Even though, mutas were harassing him, and that was some part of it. It was mostly just Cure not really pushing the lead that I feel like he had built up. Whereas if I imagine the same scenario with Byun or Maru, I just imagine the army already winning. To hell with my SCVs. I'm going to push with this army. I'm going to win with it. By the time Cure didn't even push in. I think Dark pushed into him. Yeah, anyway, that's an example of somewhat recently, but it's kind of been the case for a couple of years at this point, actually. Every now and again, Cure likes to prove me exceptionally wrong, and he just comes out swinging in TVZ and looks like a god, and I'm like, okay. But the last time I remember being truly, consistently impressed with Cure's TVZ was Gamers 8, which is almost 3 years ago at this point. That was almost godlike. And then Raynor was playing godlike, so rip. But yeah, but since then, I don't, it's just, you know, it's not where I have the most faith in him, actually. TVP was where I had the most faith in him, and then that's kind of a difficult matchup right now for the Terrans. They're still figuring some things out. And then TVT, like, he's totally fine in that one. Yeah, he gets the drone. But yeah, that's my dilemma right now. So I feel like Cure overall is maybe a more consistent player than Rogue. They both perhaps a little bit of weakness in this matchup. Cure did SCV scout, which then led to the SCV blocking the third hatch. Something that I really suggest people who aren't pro gamers just do all the time. Because a scout of minerals for us does not matter. But blocking the hatchery of a non-pro gamer Zerg is exceptionally tilting for them. Anyways, Rogue does take care of it. Lost a drone to the Reaper that was all cute and whatnot, but this is very basic opening TVZ. 3CC coming out for Cure before the starport, so the usual, really. And then maybe a Banshees alongside those Hellions. Rogue didn't do anything particularly special. In both games versus Byun, he did play macro. And that was kind of his undoing in the second game. But he wanted to get up to 80 drones on 4 or 5 bases, and then high technology as well. He did have the one Roach game versus Maru, and I would like to see him bring that out versus Cure. I think the only reason it didn't work against Maru because Maru was, he drank liquid luck or something. That was just insane. I don't know how that worked out. But I think otherwise it was a powerful enough build that it could catch Cure off guard. Maybe Rogue's not feeling it ever since that game. You can see a lot of oversaturation happen as Rogue's waiting on his third hatch, now transferring almost saturation number of drones to his third. Banshees are on a ticket. We got Hellion Banshee, Tech Lab on the barracks. Worth noting, I guess, we did see a mech earlier today. Most of the non-Gumiho Terrans do not play mechs, so it's usually not something I think even about looking for. But yeah, it's occasionally, right? That stim should be started once he has 100 gas. Third CC on the way. Overlord will see that. It hasn't seen much this game, but you can kind of tell the lack of supply deep was the third CC. And then the Banshees, well, he didn't get a scout on the Banshees. You can produce a cautionary Spore Crawler and generally be okay against them. Just one, you know, well, what if? And then it's usually enough to give you time and save your drones. Where are the Banshees? Yeah, speak of the devil. 2 drones go down before the Spore is done, so almost perfectly timed. And it was also before Cloaks. This is kind of that's the reason the Spore was almost perfectly timed. Sometimes, and I would say most of the time, the pro gamers do wait for Cloak to be done. But there is the time where you could just send a Cloakless Banshee out, take the risk of getting hit by Queens, and find that little timing. As long as you have the Banshee, I suppose it's all good. Baneliness on the way for Rogue, so definitely no roaches in this game. 4th base as well. Creep spread on the way. Cure is still building up his production, including his starport technology. And Layer's almost done, actually, so that's the sum of the game so far. How many Hellions did he produce? 6? Oh, okay, he split them. 3 on the offense, 3 on the defense. Very safe way to play. Because the Hellions on the offense will probably never be very truly offensive. They will not go for run-bys. But they're scouting. Anything that can get on the other side of the map and see a surprise number of Lings or a surprise number of, hey, Roaches is safe to do. Banshees managed to find a couple more drones. Overseer might be a little bit late. It's also off. I think Rogue thought that wasn't punishable. I feel like that is supposed to be on the high ground? I mean, the Banshee was coming back anyway, but oh well. I'm not a Zerg player, so I cannot tell you 100% whether it is supposed to be a pervert pillar. I can tell you that it feels like the complaints from the Zerg players of pervert pillars that look like they're safe and they're not feels like it's grown the last 2 map pools. So but I feel like that was supposed to be. That was supposed to be safe. The Ling is going to not scout this, but the Changeling will. And it looks like here to not notice it is a Changeling. There we go. A lot of technology on the way for Rogue, but where is his army? Pretty well prepared. That's a good enough army, with the Banelings included. Hellbats will not be ready yet as the armory is not yet halfway done. Tank was positioned very safely. Way in the back. Wanted to clear out the creep, and then maybe, if there wasn't a response, if the scan didn't reveal a big army, maybe he would have pushed that tank up to here. Still playing it safe. Down in the low ground. More reinforcements on the way. It is going to be an 8 racks from Cure, guys. So Rogue already had to deal with this once. He did not deal with it successfully. Lurker on the way. Hive. 75 drones instead of the 79 against Byun earlier. Not quite enough gas to get everything that he wants, though. That's a little bit of a concern. 4th hatch is under fire. 5th is in the corner. And that's where the drones have already evacuated. Queens are transfusing, because I don't think you really want to get this base up this easily. This was pretty easy. Very safe, methodical from Cure, but then still rewarded with a fairly early hatchery snipe. The 5th base will allow that saturation to continue, but going back to the larva problem that can exist, like, you got to pay attention to that. 2-2 or 2-1 does start up, okay. And the Lurkers are perhaps Rogue's goal once again. Oh, a lot of Lings and Banelings heading across the map. Banelings might connect with the SCVs. Already killing 19, no, 23. I mean, hell, even more is going to go down, actually. That natural was ripped apart. But can Rogue hold on the defense? This is almost identical to the series versus Byun. He's once again not going to try and dive for a Viper to help abduct or Blinding Cloud, but maybe he wouldn't even really be able to do so. As this army was on the doorstep, decided to go for the engagement. Takes out some of the Terran army, but not nearly enough. Not for what Rogue traded out right there. Still 2 tanks anchored in a really good position. Plenty of Marines as well. And now in an abusive position too. Nah, Rogue did not do a good enough job right there. He just let... It feels like he let the Terran army so close so quickly. I do say that is somewhat of the map too. Persephone, not a very long distance. Oh my god. The Marines just they just stood there. The Banelings on the front, not fast enough, not in plentiful enough numbers. You don't even have to micro against them at certain points. This is a massacre. Yeah, 3rd to 4th does not seem like a particularly long push. So that does suck. But Rogue does seem to have a bit of a weakness. Will Cure try to capitalize on that and do the same thing and gain for 2? There are no cats in the cat game today. All right, the top left, now up 1, it is Cure. And the bottom right, we have Rogue. So, yeah. Rogue might have just revealed the weakness in that last game. They can watch each other's games, right? They could be practicing during the other set's games, or they could be looking, or both at sometimes, I guess. So it's very, very possible that Cure saw beyond 8 racks Rogue and saw the weakness. It's also extremely possible that it didn't matter and he was going to do it anyway, especially if he got that map. I can't say, because I'm not talking to Cure here. But with Rogue losing once to Byun and then a second time, even worse, really? That was a worse loss to Cure? I feel like that just cemented the weakness. I don't want to say it's Rogue-specific weakness either. And 8 racks has always been tricky, even when it's been more out of the meta or the maps haven't necessarily accommodated as much. And I do think we're going to have Cure maybe not go for it this time because of the map. He is opening very differently as well, obviously. 2 barracks on the fronts, not meta, but it had a place long... Oh, it's a 3 racks. Oh. It's had a place long enough that it is absolutely a build that you throw out every once in a while. The forward 1 racks, the forward 2 racks, and occasionally the 3 racks. The 3 racks means it's quite dedicated and it has an actual chance to kill Rogue. You can then go into a Marine pressure, which I haven't seen in a long time, but I also haven't seen the 3 racks in a while. But you can change this into a pressure if it, you know, kind of does the right amount of damage, and you can continue macroing. And then you have a lot of Marines without medevacs or widow mines or anything, but the Marines kind of just hover over the edge of creep, waving their hands in front of your face, and the Zerg player can't do anything about it. But I am really concerned about this 3 racks. The Overlord's going to see 2 racks. Oh my god, no, please. No, Rogue. He didn't even see the right Reaper. He saw the first rack's Reaper pop. Oh, please don't be why he loses this game. That would be so bad. Well, it could be. Alright, so now he knows the 2 racks. There's 2 Reapers. Who would have thunk it? He's not going to know it's a 3 racks until this Reaper goes underneath his Overlord. And if only if he's paying attention. You can also kill a hatchery. That's like, I think I don't think we see a lot of game overs legitimate. They tap out right here with the 3 racks, but we do see a lot of hatchery kills. If you go right for the hatchery with the 3 racks, it's going to go down. Even with the 2 racks, if you go right towards the hatchery and build 5 Reapers, it's going to go down a lot of the time. The 3 racks is pretty guaranteed. But if you do spend time trying to kill the Zerg, and then you don't kill the 3rd hatch, there's like a chance the Zerg can save it. But, right, every time you say, okay, I guess I can't kill you right now, I'm just going to go kill your 3rd hatch. And that's still a win. Can he win? I think he might just be able to win here still, though, actually. The Reaper count, obviously not taken down at any point. Good control from Cure to keep 2 weak Reapers alive. And they regenerate faster than the Queen. How imba. And the Queens are going down, man. Going down! And without the Queens, slow Lings will not do the trick. Speed is not even on the way. Roachborn is not done. Cure is going to win game 2 with the good old-fashioned 3 racks Reapers. Not proxy. Drones almost get a surround, actually. Decides to try and escape while he can because the drones were threatening a second surround. You know, this is not the worst. This is actually not quite game over. The Reapers did not kill the 3rd hatch, by the way. This is not quite game over. It's not good for Rogue, but it's really not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought way more drones were going to die. Manages to only lose 7 instead of 15. And with that, he's able to, I think, hang on. As long as this army doesn't go down. Which shouldn't be possible. 4 Reapers is not that much. You have to make quite a few Lings, right? And the Roaches to help deflect this. So that does also cut into his drone count. But now that he has the army, he should be feeling pretty comfortable, you think, anyway. But 1 Roach has just gone down. Cure gonna continue microing his Reapers. There's not a lot else for him to do, because macro is easy for these pros. Although, is it? Haha, gotcha. Supply depot drop. Going after that Roach cost him the supply block. But he did kill a Roach, and he killed a 2nd Roach, and he might even get a 3rd Roach. Value. Rogue has been trying to replenish his drone count this entire time, is finally eking over Cure's SEV count. But he has not had an ideal number of Queens. He's still only working on 2. So no creep spread. The active creep tumor was killed. And Cure, not really waiting for the medevacs, is he? Realizes his opponent still doesn't have a very fearsome army. Without speedlings to threaten us around, there was nothing really threatening Cure. And still isn't. Because worst case scenario, he could go and just run away. If there were too many Roaches, they're still slow. And he could stim and run away. It's not ideal, so you don't want to have to use your stim. But yeah, hovering around the edges, killing the Overlord with just supply block Rogue. He does have 4 Overlords on the way in preparation of having to build more Roaches.
For casting these.
You're welcome. But Cure is going to have just more and more trouble as this game goes on. Overlord goes down, and the 2 medevacs are now outs. Clearly, Rogue has to worry about how he's going to deal with that. How he's going to deal with medevac drops. He doesn't have any Queens. He doesn't have any static defense. He doesn't have any creep to alert him. And his Overlords have been forced to pull back because of the complete lack of map control. They're just going to die to the Marines if they stay out. And not only that, not only the drops, but just literally, you know, some of the point is trying to target fire these medevacs, get the healing out of the equation. Not really possible. And for Cure, this is an easy run and gun situation. Doesn't even need the tank. Unfortunately, Rogue did lose with 3 racks. Not right then and there, but it was the 3 racks that killed him. Cure 2-0 sends Rogue packing and advances to the decider match where he will face Byun in a TVT. As the final match of the day, in the bottom left of ley lines, it is Cure. In the top right, it is Byun, and Byun is already sending an SCV out. Let's follow the rocks. Let's follow the SCV. It's going to be 2 racks. Going to be 3 racks. Could technically be a 4 racks, although I don't think I've seen any pro gamer do that. Only seen on ladder. Most likely a 2 racks. Try and get that jump start. Possibly kill Cure. If Cure thinks that Byun doesn't have the guts to cheese him in game 1, it goes for 1 Rex expand, no scout. He could be in trouble. Byun is not going to find the ideal scenario. Cure rallies the SCV to the second gas, going to factory expand. You could still technically win with the 2 racks. It just is unlikely. Byun at one point was kind of universally agreed to be the best Reaper microer. I was a hipster, and I argued that there was a time where I think Uthermal actually was the best. This was many moons ago, 2016-ish, when Byun won his BlizzCon off of Reapers. So you could see why. But honestly, like, Uthermal was also playing very well with that. And then Reapers got nerfed and no one cared anymore. But at this point in time, while Byun's still top tier micro, I really don't put him a lot above any of the other Terrans, the Cures and the Marus. So as long as Cure, who did go for a reactor first. Okay, well, I was gonna say as long as Cure plays it safe. But that is the question, isn't it? He does not know that the 2 racks is on the way. But here's also the thing, though, is that Byun is also can kind of play it safe, too, actually. To a certain degree. He can keep this 1 Reaper at home. Well, in proxy. Which is exactly what he's doing. And that actually misses the chance to take advantage of the unit list Cure. And kind of get that jump start going. So that kind of sucks for him. But Cure didn't go for Marines, which produce faster than Reapers. So there's still a good amount of time where Byun gets to just rip through the SCV line. So Cure, he will push this back eventually. And he'll have the same amount of Reaper production with Hellions. The question is, how many SCVs does he lose in the process? 7 SCVs go down. That should probably be the end of it, unless they get a backstep opportunity. 5 SCVs below Byun, but a second command center. That's the big difference here. There's going to be a delay on it, at the very least. SCV, save yourself! Didn't try to save the SCV. Womp womp. But a second Hellion, 2 more Reapers. Byun just can't ever win off of this, but the further he delays the command center, the more that he can try and catch up alongside having that SCV lead. These Ruined Reapers could be torn down, or they could win against the Hellions, no problem. Okay. It was the latter option. Cure might have lost the game. Oh my god, he did. Okay, yeah, that still can happen. Wow, that wasn't supposed to happen. Better grenades from Byun. Better grenades from Byun. Good focus fire on the Hellions. That's the 2 things that accumulated to this. You really are not supposed to lose at this point. Absolutely not. I was trying to say that Byun might even overstay his welcome and lose Reapers. But instead he won the micro war, so. Hot damn! Byun takes an easy game 1. Oopsie daisy. Messed up a split a little bit. Bottom right it is Byun. And the top left it is Maganatha. Maganatha, whatever. Byun kind of not so much a split as much as the micro attempt on the closest mineral patch. I'm on to you. Now that was... I don't even think that is something you can replicate. You don't play that 10 times, Cure Byun, Reaper, and get the same result every single time. I don't think that actually proves that Byun has generally superior Reaper control. I mean, he might, but I don't think that's what actually proves it. It's just one of those scenarios where things happen so quickly. And there's such an assumption on the side of Cure that he has the stronger army that the very fine details are kind of overlooked. And then the next time that situation ever arises, which just seems highly unlikely, the 2-racks versus the reactor first and Reapers, you pull back after the first grenades you throw out. You don't chase after the Reapers. You, your grenades actually hit the center of their army instead of vice versa. Byun's like, you're going to do it, aren't you? Byun, a little cautious here, because he is going for a 1-racks expand. He doesn't go for the full-on SCV scout. He just goes for the proxy SCV scout, which saves a little bit of money. And generally scouts the 2-racks if it was actually on the way. Generally. In this case, it is a 2-racks, it's not in proxy. So Byun doesn't get the chance to actually scout this because he did not send his SCV across the map. So that's the kind of funny thing about this. Like, yeah, you have the ability to defend what Cure is doing with your own build. You should not die here. But funnily enough, the safe SCV play, you know, manages to miss something that could have been very easily scouted. But yeah, that's the risk reward of saving the SCV for more mining versus sending it across the map. First Reaper shows up, that's not a surprise. Although it is kind of fast. Was it an earlier barracks? I mean, maybe it wasn't actually. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Reaper from Byun just stayed at home longer, and I think that is the case. But the point is, the second Reaper is going to show up. And then it's going to go, oh my god, he's got 2 barracks! Oh god, Jesus! No. No, Byun doesn't lose to this, right? Byun doesn't lose to this. Don't tell me that Byun loses to this. Okay, so Cure figures the Hellions are about to pop, which he is right, so he does skedaddle. He does not lose to this. Significant delay on his command center, very important for Cure, who is looking for these little bits of successes. The Hellions are still not the guaranteed hold, as we saw in the last game. Nice little concave from the Reapers, couple of grenades to crowd control the Hellions, and then it can snowball. That's not going to be the case here. 2 Hellions still alive, joined up by another 2. Cure kind of missed the opportunity, I think. Yeah. The timing's gone at this point. But he does get a scout. I mean, he gets the SCV kills, he gets the command center delay, and he gets a scout. And I haven't seen the 6 Hellion opener in TVT in a while. Cure actually sent his own Hellion across the map. Likes the amount of aggression he's finding. Just going to continue throwing it. With a concave of Reapers with grenades controlling the ramp, I could definitely see his point. Doesn't control the ramp so much, but still has a nice concave. And the Hellions are terrible against concaves. I don't know if the Hellions win this, man. That's a lot of healthy Reapers. They focus fire 1 Reaper at a time, but that's, you know, not exactly ideal. Command Center has to lift. No 2 SCV production. Cure is now pretty solidly in lead. Up by 5 workers, about to produce 2 SCVs at a time. Still trading out somewhat efficiently against the Hellions, which, by the way, it's not like they're that scary even if they do live. I mean, I guess they're a little scary. If there were still 7 or 8 Hellions on the field, maybe the Cyclone would have to be scared, but, you know, Hellions, they have a very limited amount of time as to where they're effective. The Cyclone, definitely the bigger baddie right now. Gonna kill the last Hellion, only Marines at this point. Auto turret can help move away from the auto turret, a little late to it. That's gonna be RIP Cyclone. Good job, auto turret. If he had predicted it and moved away instantly, That Cyclone still is killing maybe 3 extra SCVs. Nonetheless. But still. Cure, interestingly enough, has gone into a bit of a 2-base setup here. 2-1-1. But what further encourages the 2-base is the single engineering bay. You can, you know, delay your tank, I suppose, and maybe delay the add-on of the starport or something. You could get a 3rd CC instead, and then add on your double engineering bay, and then add on your 3rd barracks. But Kira's gonna 2-base it for a little while. Byun, so far, actually a little supply block is his problem currently. Obviously 2-basing as well. He actually might have gone for a 2nd starport play. It's odd now with the amount of SCVs lost, but he is going for these Vikings here. They're not going to pop in time to deal with this little medevac drop. No stim. Still catching Byun off guard, however, killing... Wait, what was the focus fire? Oh, it did eventually kill SCVs. I saw the counter stop at 2, and I was like, what are the Marines doing? It did go up to 6. That makes more sense. So 6 SCVs do go down. The sacrifice of the medevac drop, though. The medevac drop also, I was going to say, did not actually confirm the build. I'm not sure it saw the reactor on the starport. And I didn't see Vikings pop out of it, but you know, that's kind of the only thing that would pop out of it. So that scan's pretty important. It sees the reactor. It knows that Vikings are out. 3 Ravens, Relentless Vikings, single tank production. That's tough. That is a critical set of units, even in a low amounts. Kira is already dedicated to his 2 medevac drop, however, so he's just going to continue gunning for it, and I think that is the wisest play. Keeping this army back at home in your own choke against the incoming attack would just make it really awkward. I like this a lot better. Kira definitely choosing the right thing here. He's going to probably win the game off of it. Interference Matrix on top of Kira's tank. Auto turrets do come down. First bunker was destroyed, but second bunker. What about second bunker? Second bunker holds. Tank even lived. Just barely. Does get target fired. And the bunker is only meant to hold for a little bit. It will not hold forever. The SCVs go back to mining. Kira is continuing to shred Byun's base. Byun manages to get a Viking and a tank in position to perhaps hold the low ground. And this army could also come back home. Kira's, whoa, okay. I didn't think he was going to tap out right there. Because I was just going to point out, this is still kind of a weird situation, but it looks like Byun realized that his killing potential wasn't up. He had a very slow army that depended on perfect positioning and being coordinated, whereas Kira's army was not as dependent on that. It could pick up, land on the tank, kill it, and then kill all the SCVs. So basically, Byun just realized what was eventually going to happen and tapped out as soon as he did. I thought he'd play on a little while longer, but nope. So Kira makes it a 1-1. Final game of the group. Bottom left Kira, top right Byun. One man advances. The other loses. Whoever advances into the round of 8, I guess. No. Round of 4? Wait, where do they advance to, actually? With it starting off as a round of 12, it's kind of gotten me a little twisted, so I'm sure if I thought long and hard enough, it'd be clear to me, but I can't think right now, so. But the point is, whoever wins advances. Whoever loses has to wait for Season 2, which is, like, only a month away, if that. They're trying to fit in all the GSLs before EWC because they are qualifiers. And that is really what these guys are playing for. $25,000 from GSL is nice, but $700,000 from EWC is nicer. And if you do want to support GSL and the Korean scene, patreon.com/GSL is where you can go for that, as well as get access to these replays if you'd like them. No Reaper shenanigans this time. Kira's going to 1-rax expand. He's using the SCV scout that Byun did. Byun is not grabbing a second barrack, so he's also 1-rax expanding. All right, both will 1-rax expanding. They've had enough of these Reaper shenanigans. Of course, if Kira did 2-rax this game, he probably would have won. you can't know that. So Ultra Love's gonna give us our most macro TVT yet. We'll see what variations they throw in the mid game. We saw Byun, his plan was go into a 2 starport push. It was kind of offset because of the SCV losses earlier. Was still his plan. He was getting a 2nd starport by the time he tapped out. I think I liked it on the previous map more. I'm not sure about doing it on Ultra Love. I also assume that both players will go for Bio. Finally, a little bit happening as the SCV does go down. Cure's Reaper should survive. I think it has a grenade, yeah. So it could always depend on that. No super greedy build coming out from either player. Both of them getting their 2nd gases. An almost identical build order, except that Byun has fallen behind by about 1.5 SCVs, guys. 1.5? He's dead. Tech Lab comes down for Byun on his factory, so Kira's gonna bother getting a Hellion. I don't have much faith in a Hellion. It might get a chance to dart into the natural and kill an SCV just because Byun's waiting for the Reaper to hop into the main base. But very, very similar. Wish I could tell you what player is more likely to do X or Y, but TVTs have not been coming around very often. Byun is going to go for the medevac, so that is the biggest difference for sure. Kira's going for good old reliable. He's got a tank on the way. Ravens to be produced from the starport by the looks of things. Byun might eventually go into Ravens, but first the medevac. First, a little bit of pressure. This medevac opener did dominate TVT for a while, but then TVT got reverted. The Cyclone wasn't the only thing that changed amongst all these patches in the last 2 years, but for simplicity's sake, we can say that TVT was basically reverted to what it was a year and a half ago. With the Cyclone being changed back to what it was. And that does seem to have, I guess, contributed to the lack of medevac versus medevac scenarios in TVT that was really quite rampant up to the end of that particular patch. Tank well positioned, so the non-Cyclone drop, by the way, just the Marines. Not going to find any success. 2nd tank going to pop in the main as well. It's not the worst thing that to have medevac do a lot. Doesn't get a lot of scouting either, though, and that's maybe something that Byun will want to prioritize, seeing if there's a 3rd CC, seeing if it is mech, seeing if it is a 2 starport would probably be the most dangerous thing. Not that you would usually get to see that, but, the starport does go in the reactor, so that could have literally been the check right there. Tech Lab was researching. Okay, yeah. So he also saw that Interference Matrix is available. It sounds like something that you would get every single TVT, but actually, not necessarily. I've seen some TVTs where one player does not go for Interference Matrix, and not just because they didn't go for Ravens. But it is pretty typical if you're going to go for 1, 2, or 3 Ravens, which I went up to 3 last game. Only got 2 here for Cure. Going into the Vikings now, 3rd CC is on the way. This is not the dedication that we saw from Byun last game that ended up working out. This is still aggression. You are not prioritizing your barracks production and barracks upgrades. You're prioritizing those Vikings. So Byun's still got to take this seriously. Scan ahead reveals Byun's pretty well prepared for it. Don't want to siege up if Byun is ready to tackle this, but now you do want to siege up. SCVs have been pulled. Auto turrets going down for both parties. This could be the decider. 11 SCVs haven't gone down. Medevac drop on the backside was really nice. Maybe ideally a little bit faster, but that was nice. 13 SCVs do go down, however, and that puts Byun in a very tricky position. His 3rd CC is finished, but Cure's is as well. No other significant leads for Byun. He just simply is behind by 13 workers. That actually really sucks. I think the better situation, if you could have gotten there, is Byun having more of the stop point being on the low ground, not letting him get so close to his main base, and then also having that medevac drop come from behind just 3 seconds sooner. I think that could have been huge. Instead, Cure, with a similar but not quite identical build, gets all that damage done, plus 2 more SCVs. Oh, the Raven came in. It'll sacrifice itself, though, so not really worth it. That is Byun with 2 Ravens to Cure's now 0. But Cure does have the Vikings, and if he can get them on the front, he could maybe delay or deny Byun's auto turrets, but they're not in the front, so the auto turrets are going to come down. Oh, the interference matrix. Either one. Looks like Byun wasn't confident in his ability to break that, even with the disables, so he's going to pull back. He's got to respect the Vikings, sharking around for the air units too, since he doesn't have that much anti-air in his army. Cure going to try and get his 3rd CC up as fast as possible. Byun is doing the same back at home, but he kind of needs to... Ideally, he wants to stop his opponent from getting it down lickety-split. Miss rally on some SCVs, apparently, too. Byun, a little bit of falling apart right now. This is still a situation that in TVT specifically, I very much believe in the comeback. Byun, with his increasingly more mobile army... no, I spoke too soon. No, never mind. It's actually getting less. And 9 SCVs went down again? Oh, Liberators, right. He built those Liberators. I actually saw them and totally forgot to comment on them. Oh, the Liberators. No! I thought maybe Byun had prioritized his barracks production. He did not. He actually tried to get a couple of Vikings of his own. But now he's just building into a losing game. Whereas if he had maybe had the ability to get more Marines than his opponent, if he had gotten to 30 Marines versus, 10, just throwing numbers out, that mobility can cause issues. But it's a very similar army. Cure just is winning in every situation. The Ravens did not impact the fight well enough. And this will be the end of Byun in GSL Season 1. He's not going to tap out soon, though. No, sir. If there's even a chance, Byun will stay in this game. But I'm not sure there is a chance. Cure dominated that engagement, still kept all of his Vikings alive to have the air superiority. Doesn't have a lot of Marines, so maybe if the ground units jump on top of the tanks. But they cannot do so. And that is 5 tanks, by the way. Cure just doesn't send them all across the map. All of his production is set up. 5 barracks have been around for a while, waiting for all their add-ons. Upgrades are going to finish for Cure faster as well, combat shield specifically. Byun's got no options, man. The last hurrah! Combat shield versus combat shieldless. Not quite going to work out with all those tanks supporting Cure as well. And that is it. GG. Cure takes the 2-1, advances in the GSL. And Byun will have to start practicing for Season 2.